Today I sit down with Dino to talk about all things mortgages. Dino is an expert with over 25 years in this space, and he has seen it all and has survived and thrived through several financial crises here in the United States. Dino is also huge on the self-improvement realm, has become a leader and a coach to other industry leaders in his space, and is also a host of his own podcast called God's Men of Influence, which includes hundreds of thousands of downloads to date of his podcast. Dino is truly dynamic and an entrepreneur to the core. Please enjoy this episode of Invigorate Your Business with George Stroumboulis, and let's get it started. My name is George Stroumboulis, and I'm extremely passionate about traveling the world, meeting new people, and learning about new businesses. Join me as I sit down with other entrepreneurs to learn about their journeys. This episode of Invigorate Your Business starts now. All right, so we're sitting here today with Dino, and Dino is an expert in several things. What we're talking about today is the mortgage industry. So over 25 years experience from the lending side, the real estate side, the investment side. Truly expert here in California, across the country with California coastal loans. Also a tremendous background just as an entrepreneur. And we're going to get into a really cool story about how you started your own business and that evolved before you got into the finance world, right? Yeah. And the loan side. And then we definitely want to cover what you're doing on the self-improvement side, because what you've been doing is actually inspiring to me. And we have mutual contacts that are in the coaching space and the betterment of you as an individual, and then how that transcends into the business. So I'm excited to have you here today. I appreciate you sitting down, and we're going to jump right into this. So talk to us, your words. What do you do?
Yeah, so I own a mortgage company, and it's a big space, but we are very local to our community. Licensed only in California, but 90% of our business is done just here, local. And in our space, there's a couple different ways. There's the refi shops, as we call them, and there's the purchase shops. The refi shops are only good when the rates are low. They're only really up and running for a period of time, and then they go out of business. And it's crazy because they get so big and make so much money, but then somehow lose it all in a very short period of time, right? But there's this upper echelon of loan officers that do the purchase business. And the reason why they're a little more upper echelon and I think better at their trade is because, when somebody's buying a house, there's contract dates, there's penalties, right? If you don't close on time, there's moving trucks, there's time off of work, there's emotion, there's all these things that are involved, and you're at the center of it. So you have to do what you say you're going to do in a timely manner. Absolutely. Versus a refinance shop, the person already owns the home. If it closes a little late, if whatever, they don't care. It's no big deal. And I'm very fortunate that I've been in this purchase space, because when the market shifts the way it did, this past year, we're still alive. Right. We're still busy, right? And I'm proud of that, because it's a different way of doing business, and it's a relationship as opposed to a transaction.
Absolutely. And speaking from experience, I have no shame in saying this. During the pandemic, I personally was hit. My business was hit, just horrible times for us, like from expansion, personal finances, but then these rates start getting down into the twos, and it was like such a great time to refinance. So through a mutual friend, they're like, you got to talk to Dino. This guy is amazing what his company is able to do. And I was rejected from all the commercial banks. And what you were able to do for me with the couple properties that I have and put me in that position, given what I had, I'm like, man, from day one, the way you talk about it, right? Like just getting on the phone, I'm like, oh my God, it's calming, right? You didn't just treat me, even though you had hundreds of people, especially at that time that you're working with, you made me feel like, man, I'm going to get this done for you. So like that was huge. And then just the whole process on, I think on one of the first calls, I'm like, just talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old, like what's going on right now? What do I need to do? Here's my information, and you guided me through it
Yeah.
and successfully did it in the worst economic times for me personally. So that was awesome. And then talking with your office and, you know, the secretaries and the teams and the assistant loan officers and everyone that you have in your ecosystem was just like a well-run machine, and just very impressive, right? Just from what you're able to do. And then the other side of it, just on a personal level, hey, what do you think about this? If I want to invest, you know, in the next couple of years, well, maybe this, and this, you should talk to this person. So you're just like catalyst in this space. It's not just mortgages.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that, like from my personal experience, it was incredible.
Yeah, you know, again, it goes back to that. It's not a transaction, it's a relationship. And I like to use the phrase, you know, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 + 1 could equal 3 or 4.
Right.
Because a transaction, yes, it's 2. But if I'm good to you, you're going to introduce me to several other people. And it equals 3, 4, 5, who knows what, right? So I look at everybody as a long-term relationship. And if it leads to more business, great. If it leads to a friendship, even better. If it leads to whatever, it's better than one and done.
One and done, absolutely. And which is great to apply to any business, right?
Yeah.
Like, I like to sell lighting. It's not just one purchase order. You want to multiply it as much as you can and build a relationship. So there's several different ways we could go from here. Mortgages in general, like how did you get into this space?
Yeah. It's, you know, it's great because I was actually going to get into real estate, and I had every intention of doing that. And I had a friend from college that said, dude, you should look at the mortgage industry, right? And
what year are we talking now? Date yourself here.
yeah, I don't know, what, 25 years ago, whatever that was, right? So 25 years ago. And I mean, what is that, 1998?
Late
Right?
90s,
So, yeah. And at the time, it was the second mortgages were really big, and it was 125% of your value. So they were giving you more money than what your home was worth.
Jeez.
And at the time, mortgage brokers were charging 10 points, right? So if you needed a $70,000 loan, we were making $7,000 on that. And he's like, it's the easiest money you'll ever make. And it's plentiful. Everybody wants this. So I like, done, let's do it. I got into that. And then literally like 2 months later, by the time I even learned how to do a loan, 2 months later, the whole thing crashed. But I stuck with it. And I ended up loving the business. And real estate, as much as I liked that and thought that would be fun, it just had a different, like, it was almost too easy, if that makes sense. You know,
Like, because your brain was just operated that way?
the mortgage piece to me was it was going to be more plentiful because, you know, the refinance market, right? So everybody I do a loan for when they buy a house, as far as I'm concerned, when the rates drop just a half point, I'm refinancing them.
Gotcha.
Right. So it's almost like doubling your business, even tripling, because we refinance the same people over and over again. And if somebody needs cash, sometimes I'll refinance them even if the rates aren't better, right? There's all these opportunities versus the real estate side. You know, if the person's going to have a move up, great. If the person, you know, wants to buy an investment property, great. But on the refinance side, I looked at it as multiple transactions per person.
Smart. Yeah. Not a one and done.
Yeah.
So you start in this industry late 90s, there's a crash. Then fast forward a decade, there's another one in '08. Fast forward.
Well, a couple in between too.
Can you walk us just from a high level, like in the United States, because there's a lot of listeners outside of the country, and they always see, you know, documentaries like The Big Short, the movie, and different people have explained the crises. Is it just a cycle and it repeats itself? Because right now we're in 2023. From 98 to 2023, can you touch just upon that?
Yeah, so this was the longest cycle we had of good times, right? All the other ones they came faster and they were a little bit more like this.
Right.
2008 was like off the charts, incredibly terrible. But I'll tell you right now, is almost just as bad as 2008.
See, why is that? Because no one's talking about it. Your average person is not talking about it.
Yeah, and the reason why, so it depends on how you look at it, right? The the crash per se isn't as bad as it was overall, but the mortgage space is just as bad as it was.
Okay.
And when you have rates that were at like 2.75 on a 30-year fixed, and then got all the way to 7.75%, that's such a drastic, in such a short period of time, that it was devastating to a lot of people. The mortgage space, this is the slowest we've been since 2008. And prior to 2008, it had never been that slow before.
Okay.
So all of going back to that original thing I said, how there's the refi shops and the purchase shops, all of the other little hiccups, weren't that bad because I was always a purchase guy.
Gotcha.
Right. So even though it slowed down, it was never that bad. In 2008, it shut down, right? So you couldn't even get a loan. It was just difficult.
For how long? Like, how long were you out of commission for?
So it was probably a good 6 months where it was like, oh boy,
okay,
what is happening? Can't even get a loan, right? Like all the banks were shutting down. All these things were happening. It went from getting a house with 0 down to 5% down to 10. You couldn't even, you needed 20% down for a minute. And who's got 20%? So if you have a house that at the time, let's say was like 500,000 or 600,000, and you were used to, okay, let's just say 10%, right? 60 grand. That's doable. It's doable for a lot of people, but all of a sudden you needed 120, just not going to happen. So the price of the house, let's say it goes from 600 to 500, it's still 100 grand.
Right.
Goes from 500 to 400, it's still 80 grand. All of a sudden it starts becoming a little better, but that's what caused so much of the steep decline in such a short period of time, because the spigot for getting a loan got turned off.
But why was it allowed? Like back in the 90s, you said they were giving money 125% of the value. So $1 million home. Why that extra 25%? Like why was the structure like that?
In banking, there's this fine line, fear and greed. When greed kicks in, which is the majority of the time, everything goes, let's make some money. And you got to realize with the majority of these mortgages, they put them together and they get rid of them. So it's like a hot potato.
Gotcha.
As long as you're not hanging on to it, you're okay.
Gotcha.
Right? So that's why it was allowed. And then after 2008, a lot of new rules went into place and it became a lot more difficult. But greed, once again, kicks in, and then creative people find creative solutions, right?
Yep.
And all of a sudden things start coming back. Now it's not nearly the wild, wild west like it used to be. So there's still a lot of checkpoints that you have to stop at, right? And there's things that you have to do, but it's kind of, even the government is kind of coming back into it, right? When they tighten up too much and things get difficult, they're putting stuff on us to tighten up, but then when it gets too tight, they're coming up with solutions. Like just recently, they came up with this Dream for All program.
Okay.
We're going to give you 20% down. You don't even have to pay us. You're going to give us a little percentage of the profits one day when you sell, but you don't have to pay us. Well, what's that doing? That's just as creative as what these banks were doing to try and get people in.
Giving 20% over.
Yeah.
So a Dream for All, for example, and this is good just for people. What is that? Is it a certain income bracket can apply for this, or how does that work?
Well, that's where this really opened up. It became available to the majority of people.
Okay.
The problem is there was 2 problems with it. One, they barely funded it, meaning it ran out of money in like 2 weeks.
Okay.
What's the point, right?
What's the point?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
But then I think they kind of went about it all wrong. I get it. Their goal is to get people into houses, but what they did is they caused a bigger problem. And here's why: because in Orange County specifically, right, but all of California, but let's just say Orange County since that's where we're located, the housing market was already hot. And the reason why it's hot is because there's super low inventory. There's nothing available. So when something comes on the market, it's like right? Everybody flocks to it. So we were it had slowed down quite a bit, right, when the rates went up. But come February, it really picked up a lot. All of a sudden, multiple offers again. Everything got crazy, and all because the rates dropped from high 7s to high 6s, and now even like low 6s is where we're at now. So all of a sudden, the market's picked up and it's going again. The problem is 20 offers on every property, right? Now the prices are going up quickly. We're having appraisal issues again, right? And you got to be super creative to get your offer accepted. When the Dream for All program kicked in, we had a client that was trying to get it, which I thought was going to be a waste of time, because like you can't even get an offer accepted sometimes, right? So now you're trying to go in with 0 down and get an offer accepted. I talked to the listing agent and said, hey, out of curiosity, I'm trying to kind of get some background. He goes, we had 35 offers on this property. 20 of them were regular. 15 of them were Dream for All. Jeez. So imagine now what happened to the price of that home. Thanks to the Dream for All, it made buying a house even more difficult.
That's insane. So it's making it even more difficult. And the program ran out in a couple of weeks.
They didn't realize that that's right, but everything has cause and effect.
Yes.
So if you need to fix the problem, I think the problem is, how do you get people to sell a house when they have a 2.75% interest rate?
Right.
You got to get them out of that house to open up the inventory. Because if inventory doesn't open up, then you're going to have the same problem.
So you're in a bubble down here, like an amazing bubble, right? Orange County, obviously it's by strategy. You're born and raised here. But this has just been crazy, even for myself, looking at homes and trying to get in here. The market, it's gone crazy. And even now, there's no inventory, multiple offers. So is that by strategy why you've stayed here? And why do you want to expand across the country? You're in such a good bubble that's been feeding you for 25 years.
For the first time, I actually thought about some other states, because for the first time, so many people are leaving California.
What was driving, like the first time? Was it just politically? Was it business-wise, or a combination?
I'm in Orange County, so I hear a lot of the political, right? Because it's so conservative.
It's ingrained, yeah.
But at the same time, they're just some of the louder people.
Sure.
Right? So everybody thinks that's all it is. But at the end of the day, I mean, thanks to the pandemic, right? Everybody can work from home. So you don't have to be somewhere. And there's a lot of people that cashed out because the housing went up so high and then got into something cheaper.
Yep.
Right? So it's like, it's a great retirement move. It's a great financial move. Problem now is you got Texas, you got Tennessee, you got Idaho. Prices of homes there are not that much cheaper.
Exactly.
They've gone up a ton.
Exactly.
So going back to answer your question, I've always said, I stand within more money at all times just here in Orange County, that I don't need to go anywhere else. If I put all my attention and focus on my own hometown, there's more than enough business.
Exactly.
And I've always used the example, and the big boys, right? Like Rocket Mortgage, Loan Depot, some of these big online internet banks, they have to make this much of the entire loan business in the entire United States just to break even. I have to do this much just of Orange County to make a lot of money.
Yeah. So you touched upon something. We've had conversations about this. When you try to expand and you try to grow and you try to go out there and you're not laser focused in your strategy, what are you really chasing? Right. And what you just said, just that simple example, like just to break even, what they have to do versus, man, this is a great market. I can have a great lifestyle. I can support several families that work in your establishment, right?
Yeah.
That's just great advice. Like, be laser focused, and if it makes sense, grow.
I've become such a huge proponent of laser focus and, just niche products.
Yep.
It's so hard to comprehend, especially when you're younger, that if you only do this, you're going to make more money. It just seems more logical that if you can do all of this, you'll make a lot more.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is I always use doctors as an example. Doctors that are specialists in something, right? If you get sick and you go to a general, you get right in,
Yep.
right? within a day or two, sometimes a week at the most if they're great. But if you have a real problem and you're going to die, it's like a 2-month list.
Yeah,
waiting list to get in.
Well, they're just redirecting you right to where you need to go, the specialist.
Yeah. And guess what? You're paying 5 times as much money.
Yep.
So that's I think in any business, that's what you do.
The specialist, yeah.
Specialist.
So talking about mortgages, and again, the people, we have a lot of listeners in Canada, in Europe. Let's give them an example and try to take, you have very wealthy clients and then you have other ones that are just trying to get into their first home, right? But if you took the middle of the road and said, hey, the average home price that you're mortgaging, what number is that? Let's 2.5 million, 2 million.
Yeah. So
let's use a round number too. Just
I'm going to say the average first time home buyer in Orange County is somewhere around 700,000 to 800,000.
Okay.
For the first time ever, we've had lots of first time home buyers buying over $1 million, which before a first time home buyer was 4 or 5, maybe 600,000.
Yes. Yeah. Which is insane.
Which is insane.
So Orange County, beautiful area here in California, United States, obviously. So first time home buyers say about 700,000. And then typically other clients you have, what would you say an average new home price would be?
Yeah, so you're looking at somewhere around the 1.5 to 1.8 market. Now, I think where you're going with it is, yes, Newport Beach, totally different story.
Different animal.
Right? Yeah. Completely different animal. It's not the norm. It's not like what most people are like, right? So
it's just absolutely insane here. And then you see the prices and what you get. It's another world. So talk to me, the $700,000 first-time home buyer here in California, in Orange County. What's the profile of that family or new couple, and what do they need to get in there? Like, I just want to compare because it's so different. Canada's so conservative when it comes to, financing. I just want to put in perspective for the listeners.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, as a business model, I'll tell you, years ago, it's been probably 9 years ago, I kind of made a switch and I went away from what I had been doing, which was a little bit more of a higher end client, all that stuff. And I specifically went back to first time home buyers. And it was a tough decision because they're a little bit more of a pain in the, they're a little bit more, green around the edges and, just
emotional.
Emotional. But I learned how to work with them. I learned what it is that I had to start doing a little bit different because I had to change my method. And ultimately it was the best thing that we did. And the reason why is because there's so many of them.
Okay.
There's just so many of them. And if you look at the birth rates of people over the next several years, there's not much of a decline. I mean, like it started with the millennials and then it just kept on going, right? So if you look at the average age of a first-time home buyer, it's about 34 years old.
34, okay.
34. So the way to predict what's going to happen is you look at the birth rates 34 years ago.
Right.
And then you can say every year after that. And if there's any kind of a decline in births, then you got yourself something to worry about. But you can forecast this out for years to come. There's no decline, right? Lots of people were being born.
Smart.
Something really fascinating is back in 2008, people can blame all sorts of things, right, about why we had such a big crash. But one thing nobody realizes is, I think it was like 33 or 34 years prior to 2008. Do you know what happened?
Lower rates?
Nope. Huge decline in births.
Okay.
Yeah. You know why?
And that's what I meant. Sorry, lower birth rates.
Birth rates.
Yeah.
Because they legalized abortion. And we had the steepest decline in birth rates ever in that 1 year when it happened. And then now you don't realize consequences or anything, but fast forward 33 or 34 years later, 2008 hits. And yes, there was a lot of things that transpired, right? But everything is like a house of cards.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, there's not enough people coming into market
to feed this Ponzi scheme.
To feed the Ponzi scheme. It's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah,
all of it is, right?
That's interesting.
Not enough people to buy cars, houses, appliances, all the other stuff that comes along with it. right? And all of a sudden it stops. And all of a sudden it exposes all of the BS that was actually going on. Sure. Now, maybe if the birth rates were still high, nobody would have noticed.
Or it would have just pushed it out several years or whenever.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great to know. 700,000 first-time home buyer in Orange County, get to, 2-bedroom home. Average profile is a 34-year-old male or female, right?
Yeah.
What do they typically earn? What do they typically need to put down to get into a $700,000 home?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy. Like, we've gotten pretty relaxed on stuff. So a lot of them will do, there's the FHA loan, which is 3.5% down. A conventional loan, which is typically the better, longer term route, 5% down. The average, I would say, for my people is between 5 and 10%.
Okay.
And in the lending industry, every 5% more that you put down makes a little bit of a difference. So every 5% gets you a little bit of a better deal. Mm-hmm. On your credit score, every 20 points also gets you a little bit of a better deal.
Every 20, okay.
Every 20. So if you have a 719, so 700, 720, 740, if you have a 719 credit score, you're 1 point away from something better. So I always tell my clients, when we look at your overall profile, we're not going to just tell you this is what you qualify for. I'm going to look at it and say, look, you're 1 point away and you'll qualify for this much more, or you're 1 point away and you'll save this much more.
Right.
Right. And there's little quick fixes almost always that we can do. Okay. Almost always.
So you're always walking them through that. You said you switched from your model about 8-9 years ago. What did you do to, what are some stuff? Because the one thing I noticed when we were going through the process as a client of yours, the whole digital side, you use digital to your advantage and you maximize your time, where it's, hey, instead of getting on a phone, I'll walk you through this, great, you're always available. But then there's the digital side where you're recording the step-by-step on, here it is, so I can play it back or share it with my wife. I feel like you utilize a lot of online tools to maximize your time.
So it's interesting because it starts with, how do I get those clients? And all the tools I have later is how we'll keep them and grow, but how do we get them? And it's actually the way I got you.
Yep.
I specifically went after referral partners that were young and weren't necessarily at the top of their game just yet, right?
Yep.
But I was not too old, just kind of old enough where I'd been in the business for a while and I could help coach them up a little bit and help them grow their business. But all of those people, like real estate agents in particular, they had, because of their age, they had younger clients. So I specifically went after young real estate agents, which then brought me the young clients. And the beauty of, I would say, Orange County, specifically kind of like the higher end of Orange County, they're not factory workers, meaning they don't get 2% raises every year. Mm-hmm. They don't buy a house and be like, we're done, 30 years, right? We're going to live in this thing. They buy a house making probably together as a couple somewhere around 150, 180,000. And then 2-3 years later, they're making 220, right? Other people, they're making little incremental jumps. So they don't have the ability to scale as quickly. So our people will buy that property and then 2 years later, for tax reasons, wait 2 years, sell it, maybe 2.5, 3 at the latest.
Right.
They sell it, they move up.
Gotcha.
So there's a huge turnover even faster with them versus somebody that's buying like a $1.6 million house. They don't necessarily aspire to get to a 2. It's typically a nice house. It's in a good neighborhood. They're going to finish raising their children there until school is over, and then they'll decide what they're going to do.
Okay.
Versus the younger, maybe no kids yet, maybe brand new little babies, maybe another kid or 2 on the way. They grow out of stuff a lot quicker.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's great to hear. The mortgage industry in general, you have a big family, beautiful family, boys, daughter?
Two girls, 2 boys.
2 boys, 2 girls. Okay, so let's open it up. Would you and are you aspiring for them to be in this industry, right? 10 years from now, 15, right? Because you've struggled. And I feel especially in America, it's like work hard, make your money, anything's possible, right? And that's why we all love America. But in this industry, you were enticed to get in it because it's like, hey, we could get rich quick type of thing, but you stayed in there and you found a way to navigate.
Yeah.
Is this industry still like get in there, get rich quickly, or is it a long game? And do you think there's a future for, you know, your kids to be in this or people who are aspiring?
Oh man, I don't know. I went to a Tony Robbins seminar 7 or so years ago, and he said something. It was business mastery, which by the way, I recommend to everybody. Anybody who's in business, awesome seminar.
3-day, that's like a 3-day program?
Yeah, I think it was 3 or 4 days. It was
10, 15 grand?
It was like 10 grand at the time.
Okay.
Probably a little bit more now, but totally
worth every penny. Okay.
Worth every penny.
Shout out Tony Robbins.
Yeah, shout out, man. So he said something that I thought was really, really good. In the old days, like GM and Ford and, you know, all of these old established companies, they stuck around for 100 years plus, right? Any company that opened up, it was sticking around for a long time. If it didn't go out of business, it was going to be around forever. Nowadays, the industries are just shifting so much, right? We got ChatGPT now. Is a writer going to be in business much longer? You know, you can write an entire book with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that are changing. Will a realtor be in business in 10 years? What he said was that what used to come around in a 20 or 30 year cycle is happening in a year. So you have to sit back when you're self-employed every year and pretend like you were going to open this business up again for the very first time. And what would you do?
Gotcha.
And if you do that every year, you actually stand a chance at trying to not just stay in business, but grow a little bit, because you have to keep innovating. Versus before, you established the business plan and you just stuck with it.
Right.
You didn't have to do anything.
Yep.
Things are changing so fast. So you asked me about the kids, and I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that my dad came from Greece, right? So we have that in common.
Yep.
And I remember my dad saying the great thing about America is that it's the easiest place in the world to make money. You can make so much money doing so many different things, and you'd be amazed to know how some people became millionaires. So, you know, always have your eyes and ears open, he said.
That's great advice, because he came from a place, no matter how driven or smart or powerful or not, there's a system. You can only go so much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So when you ask about the kids, it's like, I mean, sure, it sounds amazing that I would be able to pass it on to the kids. In fact, my oldest daughter, who was 17, started talking about it. And, you know, and then she saw this slowdown happen, and she's like, I think I'd be better off. Like, I want a job so I can make sure I get a paycheck. And then I was like, right. I got some more teaching to do to her, right? Because I tried telling her, like, honey, just so you know, if you have a steady job and you get a steady paycheck and that company starts going under, guess what? You get fired and you no longer have a steady paycheck. Exactly. So there's no difference, right? Only you're limited as an employee, you're unlimited as an employer.
Right. Well, look at our parents immigrated from another country. They obviously left because it was a horrible setting. They come here, better life. They struggle so we could have a better life. We're having a better life. We created an even better life for our kids. So it's like that cycle.
Yeah.
Well, how does it go? Hard times create hard people create good times.
Yeah.
Good times create weak people. So it's that cycle. I don't know. It's hard to say for your kids. You know, you just want to give them the best and put them on that path. But kids aside, in the mortgage industry, if you look at someone who has their own company, someone who works within them, different layers, is it a good career? Like people that join them and you're explaining their career path because you're big into coaching. What can someone make in this industry in certain tiers?
Yeah, I still say I don't know what else exists that can make this much money doing so little. And I can tell you that it doesn't matter how good you are at numbers, because that's not what makes you all the money, right? The new systems, the new technology can do all of that for you.
Plug and play.
Plug and play.
Yep.
You know, granted, when you called me, right, you needed my expertise.
Yep.
That was a little bit of an old school that I had to bring out. I haven't had to do that in a long time because everything is kind of just plug and play.
Yep.
And as a business, I prefer that because everybody else on my team can do it.
And you could scale it.
Yeah. When you call, I had to do it. You made me work. But I enjoyed it, right? Like I still enjoy doing that. But at the end of the day, to scale, I need a little more plug and play, which is the average person. But I tell the young guys that are looking to get in this industry, and again, I don't know about my kids because they're still too young, but anybody looking now, there is an absolute career in it. You can absolutely make a ton of money, and it is absolutely unlimited. That's the beauty of it. But you have to be good at marketing, because if the phone doesn't ring, it doesn't matter how good you are at anything else, right? And I believe that to be anything, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever, right? A real estate agent, a mortgage broker, a lighting specialist. If they don't know what you do, nobody will give you business.
Absolutely.
And then there's a lot of little things that make up how great you are, right? Like the team, the technology you use inside to communicate with everybody. You mentioned earlier that we do a lot of video work, and we do. And it's a way that I can communicate with somebody eye to eye without being face to face.
Yep.
And they know, because I can convey as I'm staring at them, that I actually care. I can convey my message, right? Versus on the phone or an email, we're trying to get away from that. And we're finding that it's actually saving us a lot of time because we can convey the message better and more effectively through video. And they can go back and rewatch it. We also do a lot of screen share to show them that if you do this, look how this changes. If you get a condo with an HOA of 500, how it changes your buying power, right? Or if you buy a house with a high property tax rate, it changes your buying power.
Right.
And we're able to show them this, which you can't just explain that to somebody. And using technology is absolutely a must. Anybody young, I tell them 100%, this is an incredible career path for you. And the reason why is because everybody else that's doing it old school is my age or older. Right? The average age is even older than me, and I'm 52. So they don't have many years left. And everybody else in the industry is working for one of these big companies. So all they are just order takers.
Yes.
They're never going to be at that next level, right? They're the refi shop.
Yep.
They wait for the phone to ring. We make the phone ring. So I tell the young guys, if you're all in, I'll teach you how to do all that stuff. I'll teach you how to hunt. And you'll have a career that far surpasses anything you can imagine. And the beauty of it is that it's very much a 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, right? It can grow exponentially.
Sure.
Because if you do this the right way, and if you look at the younger generation, they don't want to deal with a 60-year-old. So you'll have years and years and years of these clients and their referrals and all their friends. You'll grow with them. It's a great time to do it because the generation is so large and they don't want to deal with the old guy.
Okay, so aside from hard work, right, and understanding and learning and latching on to someone who's willing to teach them, right, what other requirements do they need? Like, do you need a university degree? Do you need a college degree? Can you be a high school dropout and just be hungry as heck? Like, what do you, if someone's interviewing with your firm today, what would you like them to have?
You don't need any of that stuff. What I really like is hospitality. If you have any kind of hospitality background, I know you probably have what it takes to do it. And what I mean by that is simply, well, let me back up. We have a saying that we use on everything. It's a hashtag. Hashtag, who can we serve today? Mm-hmm. It's me, who I am as an individual, so I put it on the company. And I always ask everybody, are you willing to serve? And if you're willing to serve, I think you'll be just fine. And I'm trying to implement things so they don't have to, in general, a loan officer or a realtor is a solopreneur. They do everything, right? And you can't do everything by yourself.
No.
So I'm trying as a company to do all of the extra stuff for them and just teach them how to go out and make friends.
Yeah, that's incredible. Transitioning, right? So we're talking this industry. I want to share with everyone, like, just your entrepreneurial background. You studied college here, right? We've got to talk about the Levi's story, because I think it's incredible. Just if you're an entrepreneur, it's ingrained, and this is pretty cool. So you started in your college days.
Yeah.
Something triggered your eureka moment about Levi's jeans. It was the epitome of American culture. Levi's jeans was a global sensation at one point. And just talk to us, like, what you recognized when you were in your late teens, early 20s, and where you built it.
Yeah. So shout out to Tyler, a friend of mine in college, who he landed this gig with a guy from Japan that said, I'm going to pay you, I forget, it was like 40 grand salary. And the only thing you have to do is go and buy things for me and send them to Japan. And they were typically new things, right? Like leather belts, leather bags, all these different American things.
Sure.
And then one day he said, I need some used Levi's. And I was like, gosh, where am I going to get used Levi's? So he went on the hunt, found some guy in Texas that was buying them at a university and just crushing it. And he said to me, he's like, why don't you do this at your own school? So I put a couple ads in, and I got a few jeans and all that. And then I finally went and I got like a table around the bookstore. Usually they would have tables selling stuff all day, every day, all year long. And I managed to get myself a table for 1 week. And I remember, and I did it with a couple other friends, my roommates at the time, right? We were all partners on this. And we only got like a couple pairs in, and a few more the next day. And then we were just like, wow, this is not working out the way we thought. Meanwhile, we're not going to class because we're trying to make money. Even though we're right there on campus, we were skipping class, right? So we started going out with flyers and handing them out to everybody. Just old school tactics of trying to get business. And it worked, because we ended up getting like 1,000 pair that next day and like 1,000 pair the next day. And then we were like, okay, you're
just paying out of your pocket on the spot.
Yeah, between $1 and $10, and everybody's bringing in all their old Levi's, and it was great. And we're like, we need to come back here again now. Like, we can't wait. But we couldn't get in right away. We had to book it out. But this time, we were like handing out flyers beforehand saying we were going to be here for a week, right? And we crushed it. We got a ton. And then somewhere along the way, I broke off from them and I went and did it myself.
Yeah.
Greed, fear and greed, right?
Yeah.
And I ended up going on a street corner in Fullerton, Euclid and Harbor, I think. Gosh, I don't remember. There was some gas station was there, and I was like, hey, can I give you a couple $100? Will you let me sit out here on a beach chair with a banner saying cash for used Levi's? And he said, sure. So I did that, and again, barely got anything in. Nobody knew about it. And I remember I was kind of depressed because I just left this school thing where we were actually going to several schools at that time, right? And we were doing well. And I thought I was going to crush it out here, and I wouldn't have to travel to Santa Barbara or San Diego or all these different places. And I was in college. We were at Dollar Drinks somewhere, and I remember seeing this really beautiful girl working there, selling beers. And I remember talking to her, and I said, would you ever consider doing a side gig during the day? She's like, well, what do I have to do? So all you have to do is wear cowboy boots, little Levi cutoffs, and a bikini top.
So after she slapped you, what did she say?
And hold up a slide that says cash for used Levi's. And before she slapped me, she said, how much does it pay? So I said $20 an hour, which back then, which was like 1990, she was like, yeah, I'll do it. No slap, no nothing. I'll do it. I'll see you tomorrow. So I'm out there, still nothing. And then she comes out, holds up this sign, walks back and forth on the street corner. And I'm telling you, man, it was like chaos was happening. Everybody wanted to stop to see what I was doing, right?
Yeah, not her. Yeah,
Not her.
of course.
By the end of that day, around like 2, 3 o'clock or so, all of a sudden they just started coming in and coming in. And I forget how many I got, but several hundred pair. And the next day I got like over 1,000. And
Social media.
Pre-social everything, right? And then on my best day I got like 2,000 pairs.
Come on.
I ran out of money. I'm calling my guys that, that I'm selling stuff to. And I'm like, you guys, somebody needs to get over here right away. Otherwise we're going to miss out on a lot. So some guy from LA that I was selling a lot of jeans to at the time, he drove down immediately, handed me like $10,000 in cash.
Just to buy inventory.
Yeah, just keep buying. And he took a bunch of jeans that I had. And then that opened the door. I did it again, and I ended up getting shut down by the city.
Of course.
Apparently you needed a permit to do this.
Details.
I'm like, come on. So I said, okay, I packed it up. She left. I went right back out there and did it again. She came back again the next time and shut me down, brought a police officer. And then I stayed away. I came back a week later and she showed up again like the next day. So I was like, okay, this isn't going to work, but I'm on to something. What am I going to do? So I opened up my first, I was looking for a location. I found this little 300 square foot nothing.
Yeah.
And I went in there, it was vacant. The owner, the strip center was painting it. I said, hey, I'd like to rent this. And it was literally $300 a month to rent it.
From a hobby at school library, right outside of the bookstore, to like gas station to storefront.
Yeah.
All within a couple months.
No, that lasted for a little over a year or so.
A year, okay.
Yeah. And I had just graduated college and I literally did this right away. And that thing exploded, man. It totally took off. So then I opened up, then I also had an outlet because it was, people would come in and sell, and I had a few racks out there that I was selling stuff. The good stuff was going to Japan, Europe, Israel, Australia, and the bad stuff, all of a sudden, all the Hispanics were coming in, and like the acid wash jeans that were like, nobody wanted them at the time, I was selling 2 for $10, and I was buying them for $1 a piece. So $2, and I was selling them for 10. And those were the bad ones.
And those were the bad ones.
The bad ones.
Yeah.
And that worked out. So I was like, hey, this is good. I'm going to open up a second store. And I opened up another one, a little bit bigger for more retail space. Still awesome buying. Like I'm buying hundreds of pairs every single day.
Right.
I'm selling all the bad stuff there and wholesaling all the good stuff. And then a third, fourth, fifth place. So I had 5 retail locations.
5 locations all in Orange County.
In Orange County. And between that and wholesaling, I was in my mid-20s, man. It was such a good life.
Single, girls coming in, cash in your pocket.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
So I'll tell you, before I tell you what happened, dealing with foreigners is no joke. They're not American.
Yep.
They don't deal a certain way. So I got to learn a lot about people. The Japanese, which was a big piece of it, were very respectful. Hard negotiators, but the second they committed, it was done.
Their word.
Shake their hand, and it's their word.
Yep.
I remember dealing with some other cultures.
Sure.
Right? And
good save.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, it was all different.
Yeah.
And I remember I had one of my biggest loads, and it was about $10,000. And the whole business was cash back then, right?
Yep.
So it was great. And we're going through literally each and every pair of jeans. There was like 2,000 pairs of jeans. So we're going through each one. You grade them, you look at them, you do this, you throw them in a pile, and then you count them all up, and you get your money. Well, through this 2 or 3 hour process, the guy's psychoanalyzing me and talking with me. We're becoming friends.
Sure.
And then he realizes that I'm just a young kid, and that I don't have a ton of money, and I've got these stores and this and that. And now I'm all excited because it's time for the payday. And he just lays it right on me and says, I'm not going to be able to purchase these for what we agreed upon. It's not that good. And I'm like, what do you mean it's not that good? And he goes, well, just the quality is not as good. I'm like, well, you separated them into your own quality. And he goes, yeah, I'm just not going to be able to do it. Knowing that I needed the money, right? So So then this was the Greek in me.
Yeah.
I didn't know exactly how to handle it, and I couldn't walk away because I did need the money. But at the same time, the Greek in me said, all right, I'll make you a deal. Let's flip a coin. If you win, you can have your price, which was like, I think, $2,000 less than what we agreed on.
It's a good chunk of change, right?
Yeah. If I win, you're going to give me $2,000 more than what we agreed on, right? So $8,000 or $12,000.
Yep.
And at that point, I was like, I am going to take this one way or another because I need to walk away with money, right? And he said, and he was of culture, and you know, people of culture love to gamble.
Yeah.
So he was in.
He was in.
He was in. And I said, but I go, you're going to keep your word this time, right? He said, I'll keep my word. I flipped the coin. I won. I got my $12,000.
You?
Yeah.
No way. Jeez.
So, but lesson learned.
Or nothing, or no?
We left it at that. I walked away. But lesson learned, right? Negotiations
Oh, yeah.
come in many different ways, right? It's not just negotiating a price one time and being done. They're going to psychoanalyze you. They're going to know exactly, and then they're going to hit you hard when they have an opportunity to. So I learned an awful lot during that period of time about how things are done.
Yeah.
Right. And in different cultures. I know you work in a lot of different countries, right?
But that's a real life lesson on, you need to get burned a few times until you're like, okay, let's not do this again.
Yep.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So you go through that process like that. That's a pretty spectacular chapter.
Yeah.
Right. Like your own retail operation from scratch.
Yeah.
All right.
So then to answer your question, what happened, right? So then it must have been 1997 or so, somewhere around there, because it was right before I got into the mortgage business. The Japanese economy just literally crashed. It was done. And just like that, jeans, we were selling them for like $30, $35. We're now going for like 15.
And you're buying them from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah. So it completely changed. And then I'm like, all right, well, thank God we still got the Europeans and the Australians, and they're no dummies. The second that happened, they were like, okay, that's the most I can pay.
Isn't it amazing how fickle we are?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it quickly changed. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons. If I could do all of it over again, I wouldn't have done all the retail. The retail, you have a lot of employees. You have inventory that sits out on racks. You have to learn how to manage inventory, right?
Yeah.
Wholesale was just a whole different beast. You don't need expensive retail stores.
Right.
You can be in a little, warehouse in the middle of nowhere. Nobody even knows what you do. Maybe
a security system or something and call it a day.
Yeah, a bunch of racks in there to kind of organize things, and that's it. Loud music playing for yourself, and you're good.
And this is pre-internet, so it's the online sales didn't really exist.
Yeah. So when the economy died, it immediately changed everything. And what I realized is that my retail business, because I went from those acid wash jeans 2 for $10 to nicer and nicer and nicer stores.
Right.
And the nicer stores kind of sank me.
Okay.
It changed everything, right? So if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have spent all this money opening up beautiful stores with high-end inventory and all this other stuff. I would have stayed cheap and inexpensive, right? And it's profit. I mean, a big, huge warehouse to store thousands of jeans that you're wholesaling, at the end of the day, the monthly cost of that with maybe 1 or 2 employees is nothing compared to all of these, right?
5 locations, everyone this, that, like that's insane.
And even though I was young, once you get used to making money, it's hard to go back.
Right.
All my friends and graduated from college, had a good job. They were making like 60 grand.
Yep.
The good ones had an expense account, so they didn't have to pay for their own dinner, right?
Exactly.
and I was like, how do you guys survive? How do you guys do this, right?
You're rolling up with cash from all these locations and everything.
Yeah, every day.
That propelled you though to want to just continue to
So then you kind of, what I did is I closed a couple stores, I sold a few, and learned a lesson there too. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and The Bible says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, you know, and it's like when things are difficult, that's when you're shaped as an individual. So, you know, as difficult as times have been over the years, I look back and I'm like thankful for everything I learned during that time. I'm also thankful for how stupid I was at times, because you can learn a lot from that too.
Oh my God. And you didn't have mouths to feed, right? Married, kids, like more headaches. Like that's the perfect time to do that.
Yeah.
That's a success story. That's not a failure story.
That's how I look at it.
100%.
Yeah.
Last segment, I want to talk about just self-improvement. All right. So at the gym I used to work out at, met an individual, and one of the guys like, oh, he's a motivational speaker, you know, coach. I'm like, oh, cool. Let me look him up. And I look up Todd Duncan and I see like he had shared something. And I'm like, wait, that's Dino speaking now. One of his conferences with thousands of people. I'm like, see him at the gym. I go, you know Dino? He goes, Dino's one of the superstars in this industry. And he was just speaking so highly of him. I'm like, oh my God, that's cool. The connection. I remember saying that. And I started diving deeper into what he does. And we've chatted about it. Just talk to us. You know, you're in your early 50s. At what point did you realize, hey, I need a third party, you know, help, right? To make myself better? Like, when did you realize that? Because we go through our careers and they end and people haven't done that. And I'm in the process of always wanting better, like my time management, my mental game, you know, all that stuff. So like, when were you even introduced to this?
I was fortunate that I grew up with a dad that was constantly trying to better himself. So it was kind of innate in me to do that. When I first started in the industry, within 2 years, there was some free seminar that this guy, it's called By Referral Only, this guy, Joe Stump, put on. And I went to it, and I was broke, right? And the free seminar was really, pay this and you can get the good stuff, right? But I came up with it. It was like $1,000 or something, and it was a 2-day weekend, and I did it. I'll tell you, I learned a few really valuable things, but the one that stood out was realtors and lenders at the time prided themselves on, I'm open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And he's like, oh my gosh, you are degrading yourself when you do that, right? He goes, does anybody respect you when you're available 100% of the time? He goes, do attorneys do that? Do CPAs do that? Do doctors do that? You know, some doctors, right? But that's their thing. So an attorney charges you by the hour. You want to waste his time, you're going to pay for it. He goes, you need to develop that mindset. Otherwise, everybody's just going to waste your time. And if you talk to the majority of realtors and lenders, that's what happens. People just waste their time. So I learned this very valuable lesson within the first 2 years of joining the industry.
Huge.
And that kind of pole vaulted into several other things. So I loved what I learned out of that. And I went with 2 other colleagues at the time. I implemented a quarter of the things that I learned. They implemented none. My business escalated. Their business stayed the same.
Wow.